The devil is a creation of God with an extraordinarily intelligent nature. Watch out. LGBTQ speaks of toxic masculinity, and toxic masculinity speaks of a secret agenda to weaken men. Toxic masculinity reacts in social media with podcasts and bro science, and LGBTQ reacts with gender diversity. So toxic masculinity and LGBTQ are opponents, and now it comes. They are opponents, but both advocate hormone manipulation through testosterone. LGBTQ use hormone manipulation to change their gender, and selfish masculinity inject themselves into tough guys and then convince themselves that they are thereby compensating for the attack on their masculinity. The devil is so clever, he immediately gives you the justification for your greed and lets opposing movements fight for the same cause without knowing it. Everyone who watches this video should now know that with the manipulation of hormones, humanity will lose the last remnants of empathy. And this deadening by the devil is the 100-year-old path to digital slavery, because only a deeply jaded mind person will allow themselves to have interfaces to their brain in order to be able to keep up with society. The digital consciousness, that is the devil's true plan, while the ego of many considers itself to be awakened because they want to prevent the money system from being digitized. Klaus Schwab has given you a nice intellectual activity with his Great Reset. Crime in the economically strong part of Europe will increase enormously. Growing clans and organized gangs will gain more and more power, and most of these clan members are injected with testosterone. Then you can walk around nervously with your non-digitized cash if no one has stolen it from you yet. Also, constant orchestrated threat of war will increase Europeans' feeling of insecurity. To have a jaded mind will be the trump card in old Europe, where the barbarians will prevail in eating leftovers, because innovation giants will have long understood and will produce and sell in the eastern countries of the future. In Europe's last gasps, women will no longer choose a man out of love, but increasingly only based on their protective potential, even if it means getting a slap in the face sometimes. And then you can protect your non-digitized cash. Most of them, like the industry, will flee from this collapse to the metropolises of the new age, where digitalization will be much further and cash will probably no longer be used. And everything will be perfect there. And here too, the man will be hormonally optimized. They will all look like Barbies can, behave in a cultured manner, have a mentally manifested smile on their face, and not drink alcohol. The hormonally optimized man will be healthier than ever, and there will be no crime. The statistical numbers will speak for themselves. And yet something will be missing, because the modern world of tomorrow will be just as sterile as Nicki Minaj's artistic robot smile, which has already burned itself deeply into your behavioral patterns. Isn't it, ladies? Because after all, the woman of tomorrow should fit in well with the sterile hormone-manipulated robot man of tomorrow. And to be on the safe side, every country also has its own Nicki Minaj. And the leaders of these modern metropolises will say, "Look at the West, they smoke marijuana there, and look how criminal it is." And even if marijuana actually has nothing to do with crime, the Arab leaders will be ban mind-altering substances. But you can get testosterone from the pharmacy without any problems. This video here is Matrix Episode 1. This data stream from the craft of the World Edge Wanderer exists to preserve something divine, namely the real feeling. Apocalypse Production presents the end of a divine mission with the work The 100-Year Path into the Slavery of the Digital Consciousness, 1983 to 2083. Elon Musk, when asked whether we live in a simulation, replied that his heart wishes no, but his mind told him yes. That's a brilliant answer if you want to get people to have digital interfaces installed in their brains of their own free will in a few decades. Life gives us moments that make us feel without a shadow of a doubt that this is not a simulation but the divine feeling. With this indoctrinating answer, Mr. Musk increases the value of digital consciousness. Because according to this indoctrinating statement, the digital consciousness is indistinguishable from the divine consciousness. And so it will be much easier for the jaded people of tomorrow to decide on a digital interface in the brain, because according to Mr. Musk, maybe everything is already digital anyway. My heart wishes no, but my mind says yes. This is indoctrinating brilliance from the pen of a master. The devil. The legend of the fallen angel is the most beautiful symbol of our social dynamics, and that is precisely why the scientific statements in this work are as profoundly rational as is possible with words and writing. Because mysticism is an indispensable spiritual scientific element for understanding the big picture. So when this work talks about the devil, everyone can use whatever they want. The elite, the AI, the Illuminati, it doesn't matter, take your pick. But it probably makes most sense to swap the mystical word devil with the philosophical word ego. This work deliberately chooses the metaphor of an epic chess game between God and the fallen angel. And this epic chess game has rules. For example, the devil cannot control the human chess pieces himself, but he can only influence them, and he does this with seduction. Seduction is his control instrument. God's control instrument, on the other hand, is people's sensitivity. Only the dedication to sensitivity, which often brings suffering, makes a person sensitive enough for God and sensitive enough to expose the devil. And therefore it is understandable that the devil has an interest in destroying people's sensitivity, because this is God's control instrument. The devil, therefore, has an understandable strategic interest in a jaded mind humanity. And that's why you have to place the agenda of a jaded mind humanity above every conspiracy theory. No matter if airplanes flying into skyscrapers or an invisible virus that can only be defeated with a syringe. In the end, the devil will use the revelations of these conspiracies to confirm the ego of the smarter ones. Because if the conspiracy theory that was believed to be revealed as truth, then the ego can say, I was right. There is hardly a statement that stimulates the ego more than I was right. And this ego will identify with the messenger of this revelation, because the ego sees its sources of information as discoveries and achievements of its own mind, with which the ego increases its self-worth. Therefore, if necessary, the ego will defend the messenger of these revelations with madness and remain loyal to him. The devil is currently cultivating his new followers, who are emotionally and egocentrically attached to him. The fallen angel stands on his new stage in front of the audience and exposes the magic tricks of the old stage. And the audience cheers him on because he is so clever. He manipulates not only the sheep, but also those who believe they are awakened. And when a Tucker Carlson in the USA or a Philip Hopf in Germany are attacked by the mainstream press, then that is part of the stage show to underline the credibility of the new stage. And so that the audience develops an egocentric bond with the celebrities of the new stage according to the motto, "They are attacking my source which I discovered and made great." Everything is a distraction, while the human being in the background becomes more and more jaded. Because the true shaping and education of people now takes place in social media, while the big mainstream topics like wars, corona, etc. don't really have a formative effect on our personality. Because what do you think has more influence on the personality development of a young man? That there is a war going on somewhere that is reported on in the mainstream every day? Or is the young man's personality shaped more by the fact that such memes are used to convince him subconsciously that he is genetically not good enough? The manipulation of hormones will be the last phase of a jaded civilization before humanity completely digitizes its consciousness. That is the devil's intention, because a game of chess ends with a checkmate. And if God can no longer shape us and therefore control us because we are connected to a digital world, then you can call that a checkmate. Then the devil has won the game, and we are currently in the final stages of this game. Chapter 1, 1983 to 2083. The dulling of sensitivity through material stimuli and the dying German. In 1983, Scarface was released in cinemas, a film that advanced the cultivation of desire for power like no other film. A brilliantly cast, charismatic main character who makes Jesus look pretty pale. Who influenced the successful US rappers of the 90s more, Jesus or Tony Montana? In the 20th century until the 80s, music was almost only about love and feelings. And in the 90s, it was more and more about demonstrations of power. The same collective announcement about the desire for power also took place 10 years later in Europe and probably in the rest of the world. All these stars are completely normal people. There is no mystical connection to the devil in form of rituals. But among the deceitful ones, there is definitely an understanding of how you have to function if you want to be at the top. But in general, they are more or less talented people just like you meet in life. People who express in their music what they find cool. And if they think Scarface is cool, then the devil will rub his hands and they will get spotlight. This is called algorithm today. In the explanation, it sounds like a fair principle, but at its core, it's nothing more than a mixing console for the devil with which he can set the controls of the collective sound system to dullness. In the 90s, rap music started to be about demonstrations of power, but it was still empathetic music that had soul. Today in the 2020s, 7 out of 10 rappers sound like robots when they demonstrate their power. The devil is at the controls and sets everything to dullness, not just the music, but also in the design language, but everything with the highest possible aesthetics. Humanity will be top-styled when it sells its soul. Remember, the devil does not control the chess pieces with outstanding abilities himself, but he can only influence them. And so you can be sure that Universal commissioned the best producers and actors to create the most attractive aesthetic possible for the desire for power to be shown on the cinema screens in 1983, so that today's role models can tell you in their music how good power feels, until mentally disturbed people emerge who get the spotlight in this supposedly fair algorithm. There are many types of such brats all over the world, and they all get spotlight. This is applied mass psychology. Hardly anyone take this bread seriously, but that's not the point. It's about to destroy our sensitivity. What you see is becoming more and more extreme, and so the questionable suddenly becomes much more normal. For example, if a successful streamer takes his community with him when he buys a luxury car, then that is very questionable, but no one criticizes that anymore because the extremes jaded us. Remember, before the digital age, the people you saw on television were celebrities. Think of a well-known talk show host from the 90s. He or she would never have taken you with them if they bought a luxury car. Imagine that every week a different talk show host makes a special broadcast on Saturday evening about the color in which he has ordered the latest Italian sports car. Something like that has a huge impact on society. This is personality programming. In 2024, we will find ourselves in the digital age in which parents are distracted with news like corona, war, and central bank money while their children are raised by primitiveness. And that's why it doesn't matter whether you're a sheep or an awakened one, because your children watch the same streamers. Adults think they are awakened because they know more than others. But what good is that if the devil is raising your children to shape the world of tomorrow? You're just old meat. And there is no need to do a ritual with someone so that they work as a guiding figure for the devil. That is not necessary, because somewhere there's exactly the person who's perfect for the devil's game, and he gets spotlight. Algorithm. The eradication of German blood has also something to do with the cultivation of a jaded mind. Please free yourself for a moment from the history of the Germans, which is in the history books of the system. There is a tendency in being German that the devil doesn't like at all because it endangers his agenda of the jaded mind. And this tendency is called understatement. Understatement is a typically German virtue. For example, it is typically German to be worth 40 million euros, but only drive the fully equipped Mercedes E-Class instead of the flashier S-Class or even a Rolls-Royce. And now listen, when a country lives understatement and doesn't brag about wealth, then the young people concentrate more on their divine talent than on success. In a country where people showcase their wealth and success, it is often the case that a talented adolescent moves away from his divine talent and prefers to become interested in, for example, cryptocurrencies, because this means he can achieve final success more quickly. A country that lives understatement is less likely to provoke thoughts of success in the minds of young people, which is why the focus on the divine talent is retained. It's about engineers becoming engineers and artists become artists. Nowadays, however, more and more people are moving away from their divine talent and chasing jobs that promise more financial success. And this not only leads to a lack of innovation in the country, but also prevents the divine and fulfilling development of the individual human being, because the egocentric idea of success takes precedence over the divine idea of development. Understatement is an important and valuable virtue for the emergence of a golden age, and the devil does not want a golden age. The entire 20th century was under the agenda of destroying understatement, and the shining star for destroying understatement was the United States of America. America was the brightest star and everyone followed. For the Germans, the 20th century looked like this. They lost a war, were put on a leash by the Americans, and are now increasingly disappearing due to an extraordinary immigration policy. And if you want to know what the Germans did all the centuries before the 20th century, the German was very mystical. The land of science for mind and consciousness, the land of poets and thinkers. Even today there are traditions in the Black Forest area, which is rich in magic mushrooms, which can at least give an idea of the mystical nature of the German people. But with the industrialization and especially with the broadcasting of images and sound, the old knowledge is increasingly lost, and that was what the orchestrators wanted. What now follows is the introduction of a revelation that will immediately follow. It is the case that system-controlled immigration also jaded the mind of the population, and that does not mean that people from other countries are stupid, but rather it is due to a selection principle. This work will explain this using Germany as an example, but essentially this system-controlled selection principle applies to all system-relevant immigration countries. Germany now has an enormous proportion of migrants, which is getting bigger and bigger, while the German population is disappearing more and more. The sad thing about it is not the immigration itself, but the way it is done, because from the beginning everything is turned against each other. People who ride their bicycles to work in the fields are shown the image of a wonderland, so the greedy ones are primarily attracted, while the frugal ones feels less of the urge to emigrate. At the same time, the German daily newspaper says on page 1 that a refugee abused a German girl, and when the refugees arrive here, the greedy ones among them will be quite disappointed by the disparaging looks from the locals and by the refugee camp. They will learn very quickly that with Cleopatra, who was seen in the Wonderland pictures, you only have a chance if you are successful, while the frugal one on his old bike in his faraway home maybe finds true love. The Wonderland immigration always causes a loss of spiritual level in society, as the greed for power is primarily attracted and provoked. And in the last few decades, Germany has actually become more and more primitive and superficial, which of course was also due to the media, but also because more and more people are coming to the country with the basic orientation of achieving success and presenting their success. And that's the opposite of understatement. And more often you hear the opinion that the Germans are dying out because they are too weak. And to all those who are of this opinion, it should be said, the cockroach will still be crawling over the dry planet when the most exotic creatures have long since disappeared. So what does the ability to survive say about the attractiveness? Nothing. God is great, God is an artist, and his work of art is full of symbolism and metaphor, and the fact that the cockroach will exist longer than most other living creatures is divine symbolism. The cockroach, dull existence, insensitive, thick shell, disgusting core, almost impossible to break, and no balls. So just like many masculine testosterone injected on social media, said the dying German. It's about the extinction of the virtue of understatement. And now comes the important revelation just spoken of. The Wonderland immigration largely selects the greedy ones into the respective Wonderland, regardless of whether it is the Cuban in the USA or the Turk in Germany. So the frugal ones mostly stay in their countries, and these countries are kept unattractive. Their statistics are getting worse and worse. More poverty, more crime, risk of war, etc. The next selection stage is that Europe will now also have worse and worse statistics and become less attractive. More and more poverty, more and more crime, and due to the Ukraine conflict, more and more danger of war. And at the same time, in the United Arab Emirates, ultra-modern oases are emerging in the desert with the best statistics. No crime, the fewest taxes, cheap energy, modern infrastructure, no risk of war, the new Wonderland. And that's where the greedy Europeans want to go first. The revelation is that the devil has been selecting the greedy for decades through their willingness to immigrate, while he lets the frugal perish with their homeland. And the selection of greedy people will end on small oases in the middle of the desert, oases in a golden cage surrounded by a desert like a prison. But the greedy, jaded person of tomorrow will not even notice that he is living in a prison when he goes jogging with his manifested robot smile. And these oases are ruled by people who live out their wealth in extroverted ways. Even if the rulers of the oasis learn through this work how important understatement is for the intellectual development of young people, they would still not live in the spirit of understatement. The final of humanity will end on ultra-modern oasis in the desert, and it will be white men who will reveal to the world that white people are behind all the crimes of the last 70 years. No matter whether Corona, 9/11, the moon landing, or abuse scandals in the church or Epstein Island, the devil will make the white man ashamed of being a white man. The white man will enter the oasis in the golden cage most ashamed, unlike other humans. And in this golden cage's distorted, goal-oriented argumentation disguised as science declares the hormonally optimized man to be a superhuman. And with that, we introduce the next chapter, the hormonally optimized man. And I promise you one thing, if this video, especially the next chapter, goes viral, then there will be special conferences from Davos to Silicon Valley. In 2024, there are more testosterone-injected men than ever before. The trend is increasing rapidly because countless social media bubbles in the background are cultivating the unnatural increase in testosterone levels. This largely involves self-deception. Many proponents of hormone replacement therapy for men want to believe they are educating themselves and others, but in reality they are looking for arguments to avoid self-knowledge that they are committing abuse of power. A very popular argument that the devil has created for the abuse of testosterone power is that today's man on average produces less testosterone than he did 60 years ago. According to the self-proclaimed awakened man, the reason for this is a physical attack on the masculinity in the form of a lot of poisoning and stress, and this is said to reduce testosterone production. Absolutely nothing about this statement is wrong, and yet it contains an insidious fallacy, a fallacy that shows how much this fallen angel is superior to us. Because be sure that the fast food cultivation in the USA from the 50s and 60s is responsible for the obesity of the Western world. Be aware that the fast food cultivation was a devil's chess move that is now bearing the fruit 60 years later when the self-proclaimed woke podcast bro injects himself with testosterone and justifies it with aluminum spraying airplanes that attack his manhood. The devil created the conspiracy theory for the bros that they use today to inject themselves more powerful. You could say a conspiracy within the conspiracy theory. Already 20 overweight men out of 100 create an average testosterone level that drops, and this average value can be presented wonderfully. The invisible corona disease was of course quickly seen through, but the invisible testosterone disease is gratefully accepted in order to inject themselves more powerfully. Testosterone deficiency will be the new invisible widespread disease, and the symptoms will be so diverse that every greedy man can convince himself that he has this disease. Testosterone has to be earned, so if you really want testosterone, then push yourself up, get everyone out of the way, sit on the throne and live the power like the animal, then be the animal and become the alpha animal, said the human. In the work, The Traumatized Masculinity is said that the monkey only produces more testosterone after it has asserted itself to become the alpha, because only by constantly staying in the position of power increases testosterone levels. But that also means that you can put up cardboard figures at home and then you can dominate them from morning to evening. You just have to have a strong imagination. Then you will increase your testosterone level just like a true emperor. Testosterone is completely overrated. If I could have a very high natural testosterone level, I would refuse. My testosterone level is optimal. It's not too low, but not too high, so that my sensitivity doesn't suffer. That adjusts my level of perception exactly how it should be. I have complete trust in God and that my hormone adjustment is optimal for the universal direction I should take. Hormones can increase our sensitivity or desensitize us, because that's exactly what testosterone does. Testosterone is an attack hormone. When you are in the dominant attack phase, you release testosterone because the desensitization will help in a fight. You will feel less pain and generate more strength to defeat or even kill your opponent, which also requires bluntness. But, and this is very important now, life very rarely consists of such fighting phases, and even the attack-oriented tiger lies down in the grass at sunset and becomes silent. Testosterone must always be linked to cycles and life situations. For example, a man's testosterone level drops more and more towards the evening, which means that in the evening the man becomes more reflective. In the case of the man who was injected with testosterone, this is less the case than the divine alignment had intended for him. But in general, a man's testosterone level decreases with age. The resulting contemplation and reflection is important for mental development, which is why the symbolic figure of the old wise man makes sense. In true advanced culture, civilization is led by a council of elders who have overcome the ego. But in the hormone-manipulated, fake advanced culture of tomorrow, we will be ruled by constantly horny sugar daddies. Hormones are on a material level the connection to God. They make you sensitive when you should be sensitive and desensitize you when you should be mentally blunted. But if the testosterone level depends on when someone last injected themselves, then the divine is deprived of the opportunity to make you sensitive when you should be sensitive. And that's why it's not much less bad if you just do a hormone replacement therapy, because that also destroys the connection to the divine fine-tuning of the hormones. But it is exactly this hormone replacement therapy that is being cultivated by the bros on social media. With their ignorance, they trivialize hormone replacement therapy. It is said that with hormone replacement therapy, you inject much less testosterone than, for example, a bodybuilder, and that apart from testicular failure, there are no side effects, only positive effects, which is actually true on a physical basis, but not on a spiritual basis, especially in empathy development. But you can't really blame a lot of these bros because they didn't know any better. But anyone who has seen this work here will now be held responsible, because we have just learned that it is important to become sensitive when the life situation requires it. Therefore, the hormone replacement therapy is also harmful for a mental development that lies beyond the manifestations of the cortex. Now we come to a main character, the father of all bros, the carefully selected leading figure, Joe Rogan. He was the first to expose Epstein Island. Wow, which of course makes him very credible for everything else. That Joe Rogan has the biggest podcast in the world is intentional, and in between such groundbreaking explanations as those from Epstein Island, there's always bro talk. That's where the well-read bros exchange ideas with each other on the biggest podcast in the world. And subliminally, hormone replacement therapy is also cultivated here. And because the biggest podcaster alone is not enough, Men's Health also reports on it. Joe Rogan talks to another bro about how Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson looks too muscular to be natural, and literally adds, not even hormone replacement therapy could achieve results like this. This is indoctrinating hidden cultivation for the hormone replacement therapy, according to the motto, if he only does hormone replacement therapy, you can also call him natural, and you can also achieve great results with hormone replacement therapy. And the other thing is, so here a mutant is being called into question so that there is no longer any discussion about the one who only injects himself to the point of presumed innocence. And further down in the article, it is also explained that hormone replacement therapy can be used if you have symptoms because your body is not producing enough testosterone. So it is presented in Men's Health as medicine. The biggest podcaster in the world, who was the first to talk about things like Epstein Island to gain maximum trust, is cultivating hormone replacement therapy. Discussing whether a mutant like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is manipulating his hormones is distractingly silly talk, because there is absolutely no doubt that someone like The Rock is using steroids. The truth is, most hormone manipulated men are now above natural, but within a range that allows for doubt, because the honorless man injects himself to the edge of the presumption of innocence, because he wants to deceive the unconscious genetic evaluation of the woman in order to gain an advantage in the female selection. Most hormone manipulated men do not want to look like The Rock. I would therefore be more interested in whether Joe Rogan manipulates his hormones and not The Rock. But my interest is in confirmation, because I assume to 95% that Joe Rogan manipulates his hormones. We learned that the devil has an understandable interest in a jaded humanity in order to get them to have digital connections to their brains at some point. And so the devil also has an understandable interest in hormone manipulation, especially through testosterone in men who want to become more masculine. And LGBTQ is just a clever move for the general topic of hormones, because LGBTQ stands for gender diversity, also through hormone manipulation. And so the devil can incite the greedy testosterone injected bros and LGBTQ against anyone who says something against hormone manipulation, like this work here. He's an incredibly good chess player, this devil. He's brilliant. He's out of this world. The greedy bros and LGBTQ have the same spiritual degree, and both movements will sooner or later live in the United Arab Emirates, where they will be subservient to sheikhs who ride in their Bugattis. Sheikhs who lack humility, because the inventions of other cultures are only in their hands because the oil devil wanted it that way. Because for the human finale, the fallen angel needs a place without sensuality, where even the leaders themselves will manipulate their hormones so that the leaders, even in old age, can penetrate female influencers who present the preparation of an avocado salad in the social media with hot pants and a holy appearance. The sheikhs will be so well off that they will accept the LGBTQ movement in return. They will put up with other people changing their gender, as long as it gives them the legitimacy to inject themselves young, strong and potent. That's why the 2018 Soccer World Cup took place in Qatar, where LGBTQ was the biggest topic next to soccer. This work he assumes that toxic masculinity and LGBTQ will join hands in the golden cages, because under the dome there will be unity, while all around in the world the crises are getting worse and worse. It will be quiet and safe in the golden cages in the middle of the desert. A wonderland as a refuge, but only for those who want to function. LGBTQ also serves to cultivate hormone manipulation. The main plan is for more and more men to manipulate their hormones with artificial testosterone boosting, and for this he uses social media, where there are many different bubbles. This allows the devil to send information to each group in isolation from each other. This would not have been possible in the past without digital social media. Imagine you're sitting in front of the television with your family on a Saturday evening in the 90s, and just in time for prime time, a bro comes on with his program in which he explains to the families of the country how many milligrams of testosterone you should inject and where you can hide the box of needles from your girlfriend. I'm not a fan of long intervals. I would inject every 3 days at most. But studies have shown that the combination of testosterone and nandrolone in particular does the trick.
I'm going to show you how I pick where I inject my quad. So this is your vastus lateralis. It's the biggest muscle in your quad. So first, I'm going to go ahead and swab the area. So I go up towards the top. You don't want to go down too low because it can get kind of swollen and be a little painful. So I typically try to go up at the top. Just poke around, find a nice kind of squishy spot. Right there feels good. Uncap your syringe and go ahead and poke. Right there. And then push the oil in, pull it out. And that's how you do a quad injection.
This is now the primetime entertainment of many men of all ages, and the rest are not aware of it, while these bubbles are quietly and secretly becoming more and more worldwide. The devil uses the social media to manipulate groups of people in isolation from each other. The algorithm makes sure that none of these bros become too famous. So the testosterone advertising is spread over many shoulders, and more men are drawn into these bubbles and more manipulate their hormones. And as soon as you have a certain percentage of men who manipulate their hormones, the topic will detach itself from the individual bubbles, and the same false signs as in Corona times will declare the hormone-optimized man to be superhuman. And when you open your mouth in the golden cage in 2040 and say that testosterone blunts and destroys empathy in the population, the stable bros will laugh at you with their manifested knowledge and their manifested robotic personality.
Someone has to fucking flip the burgers, dumbass.
You can either complain about the price increases all the time or just start earning more money. If a young narcissist has a natural God-adjusted hormone level, then he will feel pain every time he falls flat on his face. Pain that will change him so that a narcissist can become a lovable person. But if the young narcissist blunts his mind with testosterone, the pain will not be strong enough for him so that his narcissistic existence manifests itself unshakably. You won't be able to break such a person at some point, but it's the crack in the shell that lets the light through to the core. But people get a thicker and thicker shell and are terribly proud of this survival-enhancing feature. And this, I call it cockroach syndrome, naturally also develops with a natural testosterone level, namely through a constant desire for power. But the artificially high testosterone level favors this development and prevents the personality change triggered by strokes of fate in those who need it most. And of course there are hormone manipulated men who have a high moral standard and a pleasant personality. But, and this is very important now, these good hormone manipulated men also destroy the empathy structure in society. Because the good hormone manipulated man is also less mentally vulnerable. So the good hormone manipulated man can tolerate the narcissist better and even be friends with him. And on the other hand, the narcissist does not show his ugly face to the mentally stable man. If the good hormone manipulated man were stopped the artificial testosterone supplement, he would become more sensitive and vulnerable, which would encourage the narcissist to show his true ugly face, which in turn would be enormously repulsive for the new sensitive man, so that he would have no interest in a friendship with the narcissist, and that in turn would make the narcissist think. You see, all of these are important interpersonal dynamics that generate mental development stimuli and are responsible for the entire empathic structure in our society. So beware of deliberately misunderstanding this work. Personality development is primarily a creation of the mind and not of hormones. But through the hormone replacement therapy that increases the feeling of power, the social axis between sensitive and blunted will continue to tilt towards blunting, which will also have the consequence that the sensitive man of tomorrow will feel more and more abnormal among the increasing number of pain-free people. He will feel downright sick, and the stupid, false, ego-favoring signs will confirm that he is sick. On average, when you should start testosterone replacement therapy, when you have symptoms that are negatively affecting your life. So that's how far we've come. In the early 20th century, Carl Gustav Jung talked about suffering being the path to light. So the narcissistic bro living in Dubai and saving taxes tells the sensitive taxpayer living in Germany to inject himself bluntly until he no longer has any symptoms. Painful mental development stimuli are simply referred to as symptoms. What a moronic science. But it's not just in the countless internet bubbles and male magazines or with Joe Rogan that work has been done on the cultivation of hormone replacement therapy. After the work that traumatized masculinity, a follower wrote me and told me that her husband was taking part in a study. He's been giving testosterone because they want to find out how much it helps with weight loss. In other words, to disconnect the man from the natural hormone cycle so that he loses weight. A fabulous pharmaceutical idea if you are not interested in humanities. And the personal physicians of the rich also recommend hormone replacement therapy. More and more old rich men are manipulating their hormones. The old wise man is dying out. Instead, more and more jaded sugar daddies. I've met a few 50-year-olds who are now taking testosterone for the first time, and they all act like pubescent teenagers. In most cases it is really like that. They talk like they did back then. Most of them only have EU in their heads, and they say older men are more mature, but when the hormones kick in, they turn into teenagers again.
Erfahrung und so weiter und so fort. Aber wenn die Hormone kicken, dann werden die nochmal zu Jugendlichen.
Around 2040, so many men will be manipulating their hormones that it will be easy to get the rest to do the same, because the world of tomorrow will be more superficial than ever before, so that the truly wise man will no longer be seen, while the hormonally optimized man will be stuffed with knowledge. Because the brain cortex is not influenced by testosterone. The testosterone manipulated man is still able to memorize thousands of books and feel quite smart in his stable shell. But there's a difference between comforting your girlfriend out of compassion or because you have learned it, One is empathic, the other is mechanical. And this is exactly what describes this collective loss of empathy in society. The human mind is being mechanized with knowledge and morals, and these mechanical, robot-like thought structures will manifest themselves unshakably through the artificial testosterone increases. And if there are more and more men like this, more and more women will be influenced by such men, and this influence will in turn blunt the woman mentally. The woman selects the man as a life partner who will shape her. And you can't blame the ignorant woman either, because the cheater in the game of conquest injects himself to the edge of the presumption of innocence, so that her unconscious genetic evaluation can perceive the doubt because of the urge to conquer. This work assumes that the same hormone-manipulated man who goes to the gym 4 to 5 times a week gets at least 3 times as many potential sexual partners in dating portals and has more chances of success as an influencer than the same man without hormone manipulation. So in the socially extremely relevant selection of women, you can post your photo on a dating portal without any indication that you are a hormone manipulated man. But if you throw a javelin or jump over a hurdle, which has no effect on our society, then there are strict doping controls. It's a diabolical paradox, and anyone who doesn't realize that is either stupid or malicious. Within this dynamic, the pressure for men to inject themselves stronger and more stable is increasing in order to keep up, especially when it comes to self-presentation in social media portals, in order to be able to serve the now distorted genetic evaluation of women. And then there are memes like that, where 2 hormone-manipulated old world stars are shown to subliminally persuade the natural man that he's not good enough. Such memes are shared thousands of times worldwide, and they act like salt on the wound of men who don't think they are good enough. All of this together, leading figures such as Joe Rogan, the social media bubbles, memes, men's magazines, the pharmaceutical industry, etc., result in an incredible energy. And therefore the rapid multiplication of testosterone-injected men. And nobody notices anything. Everything runs covertly in the background or subliminally in the mainstream. What also needs to be mentioned in this work, but actually requires a comprehensive work, is the hormone influence of psychoactive substances, and we are now limiting this to cannabis. Cannabis lowers the testosterone level, but not due to a toxic effect like alcohol, but the active ingredients of the plant make you sensitive, which in turn changes your perception. So God deliberately included substances like cannabis or psychoactive mushrooms in his material work so that people would ingest them to increase their connection to the divine through sensitivity. And of course, the devil has something against this expansion of consciousness. But why is it now allowed in Germany? Quite simply, now of all times when Europe, also because of the weakening giant Germany, will show worse and worse statistics in crime and economy, cannabis is legalized in Germany. And so in 20 to 40 years, the children of the United Arab Emirates will be told by statistics that the consumption of cannabis is bad for economy and society. In other words, they are approving it now to create deceptive reasons and statistics to ban it for the people of tomorrow. Look at modern cities. There are strict penalties for the possession of psychoactive substances everywhere. And on the other hand, the opponents of this work here ask themselves, if the devil wants men to inject testosterone, why is it so difficult to get hormone replacement therapy in the countries of the old world such as Germany? It's also quite simple, the same principle as with cannabis but in reverse. Europe's downfall should not be linked to increasing testosterone treatments, so there should only be a hidden number in Europe of testosterone-injected men, hence the deliberate black market which does not record any numbers. Things will be different in the cities of the future, where it will be quite easy to get hormone replacement therapy, so they will use the numbers of the registered patients to say, look, where men are hormonally optimized, the economy and society function better than in the old world. But the truth is that cannabis has nothing to do with the downfall of Europe. Testosterone is the much bigger problem. How many of these clan members do you think inject themselves? In percentage terms, no less than in the UFC, in show wrestling or in the NFL. And as already explained, immigrants are shown pictures of a wonderland so that their greed is aroused. Then they set off on the sometimes very dangerous journey to this wonderland only to be locked up like animals. And when they leave their refugee camp, they are looked at in Germany as if they were scum. It's very easy to understand why they prefer to keep to themselves and organize themselves. And who do you think they contact to gain a foothold in Germany? The one who looks like them and who has power here. And to be strong enough for the clan, even the lowest ranks will inject themselves. The power of the clans will become ever greater and more organized, and above all, ever more testosterone injected. The high testosterone level from the injection, which makes people cold and strong, dulls them mentally to such an extent that the greed for feelings of happiness through power becomes ever stronger. Testosterone has a lot to do with the decline of society in Europe. But in the metropolises of the future, the artificial testosterone level will be praised to the skies. The hormonally optimized, nutrition-conscious, sporting man will be healthy and strong into old age. To exaggerate, one could also say that they will declare an unbreakable cockroach to be a superhuman. And even the most tattooed, testosterone-injected villain from the West will sooner or later be sitting in a cafe in Dubai with the holy appearances and making friendly small talk, because peace and unity will reign in the golden cage so that the crime statistics can also be proudly presented. This work teaches you how much the devil loves to present numbers and statistics, which the many stupid people can use to drown out the few wise ones. Alcoholism will also no longer exist in the metropolises of tomorrow. They will proudly proclaim that there are no alcohol-related deaths, unlike the rest of the world, which is in decline. But what will be presented as a success is in truth a great loss of humanity, because in the hormone-manipulated metropolises of tomorrow, people will not reject alcohol because they have mastered their psyche, but because they are so mentally numb that they hardly perceive any negative feelings in themselves. They no longer need to numb anything with alcohol because they are permanently mentally numb. And that's why it's ridiculous when some testosterone-injected mentors brag on social media that they don't drink alcohol. Because what are they supposed to numb? And in general, a mentor should be someone who confidently perceives and above all accepts the pleasant and unpleasant impulses of his natural hormonal flow. And again to Joe Rogan to show how deliberately his personality profile was chosen. Wikipedia says that Joe Rogan has campaigned for the legalization of cannabis and psychoactive mushrooms. So the devil needed someone who combines masculinity and spirituality for this end-level status of world's biggest podcaster, so that nobody would get the idea that the leading figure is harming the spiritual world. Because the truth is, nothing harms the spiritual world more than artificial hormone levels. Joe Rogan is a carefully selected leading figure in this game of confusion. Joe Rogan is a wolf in sheep's clothing or a jaded man in a Terence McKenna costume. The slightly older ones can still remember when the smartphone was presented. It's all very mystical. The bitten apple, the mystical symbol of sin and seduction on an invention without which you can no longer compete in business and even in love today. And Apple Vision Pro is just showing how nice it would be to be able to enjoy the same functions without having to put on a headset. And this new seduction will be the beginning of the digital consciousness matrix, namely through interfaces to the brain. And what sounds like a daring neurological intervention now will be nothing more than a visit to the Apple Store in a few decades. And if you don't do it, you won't be competitive. The devil needs the greed of the power addict who wants to gain an advantage. The smartphone owner gets information faster, doesn't need to look at the map, and doesn't have to go home to read emails. But what was once an advantage has become a standard for everyone that you have to fulfill if you want anything like a career and success. And it's the same with hormone manipulation. You have more energy, you are more assertive, more dominant, physically stronger, and you gain an advantage in an energy-sucking, egoistic society. But after the cultivation of hormone replacement therapy, this will no longer be an advantage for the greedy, because soon everyone will be stable and strong. It is the greed in us and it is the greedy among us who want to secure the next advantage first, as long as it is an advantage. And this advantage will be the digital consciousness matrix. It will make people even more efficient and powerful, and may even offer them digital immortality at some point. And it doesn't matter how long this digital connection to the brain will go well, because it will go well for quite a while. It will give a highly developed AI the opportunity to create a trap that enslaves humanity in a digital consciousness. I don't know if it will eventually be like in the movie Matrix, but why is there so much mystical symbolism in this movie? And why is there also mystical symbolism in our world, like the bitten apple on the smartphone? The seduction was the devil's first act on this earth, and according to his plan, it should also be his last act on this earth. It started with the apple and it ends with the apple. We are in the final stages of this game. And I don't know if it will be 100 people who watch the video up to this point or 100 million people. But I know that every good spiritual video plays into the devil's hands if it has satisfied the spiritual needs of the consumer to such an extent that he will certainly not watch the 1-hour work of a nobody. Algorithm. People listen to beautiful music, see beautiful women and men, and form their minds with profanity. But they don't know and shouldn't know that there is more beautiful music than that which is shown to them, that there are more beautiful people than those who are presented to them, and that there are such profound material data streams which through the roller coaster ride of the oracle form the mind in such a way that the devil loses power. As long as the devil holds the reins, everything will be more important than this work here. What is this guy talking about hormone manipulation? There are more important things, real problems. Every day the most terrible things are in the newspaper and he talks about such a small problem. Hypogonadism is a disease. That's why I inject myself with testosterone, because I'm sick. You better see what the second stage has revealed. The elites are our enemies and I'll teach you how to eat healthily. Human beings tend to holify their actions instead of acting holy. The devil will harness the strong man to his chariot without them realizing it. The hormone manipulated man will defend and cultivate their actions and be the strongest force of the devil, even if they believe in God. We are in the last moves of this chess game, and if you have seen this work up to this point, you are now part of this game. You can give the devil a scar that will not look as aesthetic as Scarface's 1983. It is no longer up to me whether this work will be shared in the algorithm so many times until the platforms will use their extensive GTCs to block it. This is absolutely not about you or me, no matter if you are a woman, man, tall, short, white, black, natural or hormone manipulated. It is not about you or me. It's about a boy growing up in a world where he doesn't want to inject himself bluntly in order to be able to endure this world, where he doesn't want to inject himself bluntly so that he can keep up. That's what this is about. It's about a Morpheus not wishing that more people had listened to this nobody when the world could still be saved. That's what this is about. This work is a curse for the ego, because this work is aware that the holy mind is stronger than the ego. Much of what the mind experiences here will exist in the subconscious until it has been understood. And do you know why? Because truth is our divine nature. The strongest egos will probably manage to suppress ego-destructive truths until death, but they will always struggle with them. Blessed are those who reflect and strengthen their minds to weaken their egos. This work is a curse to the ego, and the ego is the devil. This work is a curse to the devil. Checkmate. Thank you for your attention. Hope that translation was okay. Hope you share that video, and above all save that video on your hard disks, because this is very important substance that should not be lost. And if you want to support me or thank me for that video, you can do that on Patreon. And yeah, that's it. Hope we see us again. Bye bye.